right, we are going to meet a few new characters, talk a little bit more about HTML, and then we are going to go back into explaining a little bit more about the CSS characters in the next video. We're just going to focus on what's happening with the HTML. Mr. Architect is still here, even though he is not in the actual picture. He has gone ahead and he's created quite a bit of his framework, so he's tired. He needs to go take a rest. So he's got a few more guys that he needs you to meet that are also on his team. Okay, I will live code this, but for now I want to kind of explain what's happening. That way it makes sense once we go in and live code it. All right, so I really have 3 boxes here. Remember we were talking about the box model and how every single tag element, every time you have an opening tag and a closing tag, it creates one box on the viewport or on the page. I know that because I didn't know that at first. When I first started coding, I couldn't figure out how many elements or what was going on. But if you zoom in here, okay, I have one box here. Now let's make that a little bit smaller so it doesn't get messy. This is one box. I know that's a box because it has a beginning p tag and it has an end p tag. Okay. I now have a second box. I know that's a box because it has an opening p tag and a closing p tag. Okay, and I have a third box. Oh, I can't stand it when it goes messy. So here's my third box. Okay, and I know this is a box because I have a p tag and a p tag. Okay, so pretend Mr. Architect has drawn this blueprint out. We have 3 boxes. Let's make this a little straighter for you guys. Now it's important to note, and we'll get way more into this later, that the P's are considered block elements. For now, don't worry about that too much, but I know that they're not really going to be styled and they're just going to be straight little rooms, okay? I promise I will make that make more sense. All right, so this is box 1, beginning tag, end tag, box 2, and box 3. Okay. All right, so what I've really created is my buddy, Betty block. I'll meet Betty quite a bit in the future, but for now, Betty is here. Okay, you can have a lot of Bettys on the page. Right now we actually have 3, and you notice that Betty is also called div up here. Still creates a box, still a block element, even though they have different tag names. Will they do different jobs? Sure. But for your purposes, just kind of note that we've created Betty block, and we have 3, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, now each block is going to have some kind of content, or it could be empty. The reasons for empty tags are different and far more vast than we need to get into right now. But our 3 tags right now, they have content. They have text content. Content does not have to be just text. It can be text. It can be pictures. It can be color. It can be a whole bunch of different things. All right, so here is my content in box 1. Here is my content in box 2. This is something I did not get. Seems simple now, I guess, but I was like, I don't even know what's what. The color coding in CodePen definitely helps a little bit because you know that white stuff is content. Okay. So for lazy reasons, we're not going to write all that out. We're just going to do squiggles and pretend that that's content inside of Betty Block. So she can hold content. She's pretty cool. Even in high heels. It's pretty amazing. All right. So if you can see down in Mr. Viewport here, obviously my picture of Mr. Viewport isn't here if you watched my first video. Hopefully you did, otherwise this video might not make as much sense. We are just rendering content. We don't see the tags. We don't see anything else. So basically the stuff between the tags inside of the box is what is rendering into the viewport. Nothing else, because we don't see the P's, we don't see the glass, we don't see any of that stuff. Okay. All right. Now we have another friend of mine. Now let's not go green because I want you to be able to see it. Let's try purple. It's going to get a little busy here. All right. Now this is the part that, oh my goodness, I can't even tell you how confused I was on this. And I felt like I could not get past anything else to more difficult concepts. We have 3 boxes. They're all P-tag created boxes on the page. Okay, we could just leave them P's. It does not matter. But pretend that you are trying to talk to Mrs. CSS Decorator. Okay, let's bring her back. Let's see if I can get her in here quick. We are going to bring in Mrs. Decorator. And we need to tell her exactly what it is we need decorated. If we all have just a bunch of P's, she's not going to know what to decorate. Say she needs her armchair decorated, and we don't have it named an armchair. We just tell her to go decorate that thing. Say she needs to go paint a wall pink, and we go, that stuff needs to be pink. Say we need a pillow set in a certain room and we don't have any details. And we're like, that thing on the thing, go do and paint it yellow. It's not going to make any sense to Mrs. Decorator. So she needs some kind of detail, okay? In order to do that, we have to name our P tags. And that can get pretty sophisticated, which, at least in my opinion, is one of the hardest things about coding at first. You don't understand the jobs of different things, so it just looks like a bunch of hogwash on the page. So for Mrs. Decorator and Mr. Architect to communicate, let's bring him in too, because he's important. We need to talk to him a little bit. There he is. He's back, don't worry. We have not lost him. Okay, so they have to talk a little bit. All right, in order for these two to communicate, talk about life, figure out what's going on, they have to link together. We'll meet link in the next video, but they need to have a conversation with each other with some kind of details. So that's how we accomplish these classes. They're pretty powerful. When you name a P, okay, this guy has no name. He's just going to be referenced as P. Okay, this guy, however, the next box, the second box, he has a name. And I know that because I see this word class. That tells Mrs. Decorator that there is a name to this particular box. So that could be a name of a room. Say she has to head to the staff lounge that we talked about in the last video. Maybe we would name this staff lounge. That way she knows, oh, okay, I got to go to that room to start. That way she knows what walls to paint pink. All right, the name of this particular class is my text, okay? Now, these quotes don't seem like they're that big of a deal, but the more you get into code, the more powerful I realized they were, and they do all kinds of things. But in this particular instance, the quotes, there's my friend right here. He's a holder, okay? He's a holder of some kind of information so that he can separate out from the machine what it is the actual conversation that needs to go to Mrs. CSS, or what is just other sort of, tags or different pieces of the code. So think of the quotes, at least to me, this is, probably a rudimentary idea, but I think of it as a holder of information. And once I saw the quotes like that, I was like, oh, okay. And this could be an insane amount of different information, but for our purposes, it's one name. So Mr. Holder happens to be holding the words my text. Okay, that's really just for the machine. You remember, you are talking to a machine who doesn't have an actual brain. We've created him to simulate a brain, but we have to be able to help him separate the start of something and the end of something. So that's really all you're saying to the machine. You have an opening quote and you're like, okay, machine, I'm about to give you some kind of information, and that could be anything that you put in. I'm going to give you a name, and I'm going to put it here. And then he will think that you are adding and adding and adding more and more information until you tell him that you're done adding that information with a closing quote. That's why when you get so frustrated in code, you're like, oh my gosh, I just forgot the closing quote, or I forgot the period, or I forgot the comma. To us, that seems silly and stupid, but to a machine, that's a huge deal, because it is literally just it is just reading through code. And it doesn't know when to stop unless it is told to stop. So these are kind of just holder bosses telling the machine, okay, I am going to begin some information and then I'm going to end some information. He's a pretty big character in code. We glazed through a few of them, and I have characters for them that I'll introduce in later videos too, but there's other holders, if you will, actually, and we're staring at one right now. Okay, this P tag has holders, and you'll see them in different places. And then we also, with Mrs. CSS Decorator, let's go back down to her. She had some holders. I kind of hid them in here, but these are holders of information that you've seen already, especially tonight. We were looking at JavaScript in class. We looked at these, they're holders. And then here's Mr. Architect's holder tags. Okay, I did not get that at first. I did not understand that every single bit, I don't know, even a space in code matters to the machine. It is going to read it all, and it's going to tell the machine, hey, something's starting, hey, something's stopping, depending on what the information is. Okay, so we could have these. I don't know if we've met these holder tags yet, but we'll get there. All right, so there's all kinds of friends. So he'll have friends in later videos, but just know for now I only put one in. Okay, super important. All right, now there's a third box. This time it has 3 names. My text, oh my gosh, they have the same name. Isn't that wild? So you can have same names. I mean, that happens all the time. Look how many times you see, 3 Sarahs in one class, right? It doesn't matter. They're all different Sarahs, or could be used different ways, but they're all named Sarah. And then he also has a name of sentence, and he also has a name of line. And how did I know that? How did I know they were 3 separate lines? In a way, a space can be considered a boss of the machine as well, which again blew my mind in code. But if you see spaces that can mean things depending on where they're used, obviously I don't know all the stuff about code yet, but I have noticed at least that when it's in between quotes, they often have meaning. So we know that there's 3 different names because there's a space in between. Sometimes you will see commas separating. Sometimes they use spaces. This particular one is spaces in between quotes. So I guess what I'm saying is pay attention to what things are happening in between quotes, because they all are going to have some kind of job. So let's go back down to our architect drawing, and let's add our names. Let's get rid of my content here. Oh, I can't because it's on the wrong layer, darn it. All right, anyway. So we'll just add them in here. This one did not have any name. This one was called my text. I'm going to keep my color codes here for you guys. My text. And then this one had 3 names. It was my text. What else did I name it? Sentence and line. Okay. So that could be a lot of information. So we have a way to kind of carry the information or link them together or have it sent between JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. This is the classy envelope. Neat, classy. She's so beautiful, isn't she? She even has gorgeous little eyelashes. She needs some mascara, I think. Her job is to hold the information. Okay, so classy is going to hold, let's say for this particular example, she's going to hold my text. She's going to hold the name sentence. And she is going to hold the name line. Okay, and these are all names, class names. So we can also put that here. That way we know what she's actually holding. Now, for now, that's really not that big of a deal. You're like, oh, okay, Lynn, like, so what? So there's an envelope. As I explain more of this metaphor, if this metaphor is making sense to you, then the envelope is going to come into play as it travels between HTML and CSS and JavaScript. So for now, that is it.